I'm Paul Glumaz. How are you? Um, this is the 28 minutes of someone who's been 44 years involved in the activities and organizing of Lyndon LaRouche's movement. And um, right now, there's an intensity in the global situation, and that intensity is going in two different directions. One is the direction of the Belt and Road. The other is the direction of imperial war. So, and Trump is reflecting both directions to some degree. In the North Korean situation, he is about to do something historic, establish, you know, an end to that war, an end to that Cold War. It's very important. And on the heels of that is the whole process of integrating economically North Korea into South Korea and integrating South Korea and North Korea together into the Belt and Road. And Japan is very much interested in working with that, as is Russia. So there's a lot of meetings going on there. Kim Jong-un flew in to the port of Dalian to meet for 2 days with Xi. Xi called Trump this morning at 8:30. So there's Trump's already agreed to go to meet with Xi. That date has been set, but they haven't announced it. The place has been set, but they haven't announced it. Speculation abounds that it could be on the border between North and South Korea. Other than that, the speculation is that it would be in Singapore. One of the problems is that the Kim Jong-un's Air Force One equivalent, it can't make it to Europe. So it has to be within a certain distance of what that plane can do. So, we're looking at Singapore. We're looking at maybe the border there, and but this is very historic to have the U.S. president meet with the Korean dictator, the North Korean dictator, the axis of evil, and all of that. So this is a very important thing, and it has huge implications for the expansion of economic development in the region, for expansion of the Belt and Road Initiative, also bringing Japan into it. So that's very significant. And then the second very significant thing, of course, that we talked about before, is the developing relationship now between Modi and Xi Jinping, between China and India. Because if China and India were to get together and actually work things together, start to economically cooperate together, and then you have essentially Russia, China together, and then you have India and Russia together, and then you bring China and India together, and then all you got to do is bring in the United States. And you have essentially the four powers of the planet deliberating on what is necessary for mankind, what is necessary for the best interests of their people, what is necessary to deal with the problems. And from there, you can start to shut down all this terrorism. You can shut down the global narcotics trade. You can shut everything down. You can shut all this stuff down. You can go into you can deal with the financial collapse. You can deal with all of that from a four-power standpoint. But that has not existed because there are all these mediations that are run by the British. The British are mediating or running interference in all these relationships and then mediating that interference. And this is the whole situation that exists. So all these hotspots are constant stresses that are unresolved, and the whole process of their unresolution is at the core of the control over the world. Now, what is the intention of this control over the world? Well, you have to go back to Kissinger's National Security Study Memorandum 200, which was written in 1974, but it was declassified in the 1990s. And in this NSM 200, it lays out that the primary threat to the powers that be that were governing the United States at that time and Europe, or the British, was the possibility of an increase of population and the use of the resources of the world for those people. And the mentality that these people exhibited is that we don't want that to happen. We want those resources to belong to our empire, not to the people to whom those resources happen to be on the land that they exist. So, and then of course Russia has and formerly the Soviet Union, but currently Russia has the most extensive land and the most extensive untapped resources in the world. And Madeleine Albright and all these people, Brzezinski and all these people, felt that it was unfair that Russia should, have control over those resources, that those resources should not be under the control of Russia for their purposes, but it should not be allowed. So all of the environmentalist movements, everything's been moving to block development, to block access to these resources, to have access to these resources. And so the whole thing is the Belt and Road is the end of all of that, because the Belt and Road is going to develop all those resources for the benefit of all the people where those resources are, and all the benefit of all the people where those resources are not, because those resources are going to be the basis for manufacturing the expanded amount of products that are required to raise humanity out of poverty. Now, the Chinese have a plan to bring the entire world out of poverty by the year 2050. They have a plan to bring the entire Chinese society into a much better living standard than they have now by the year 2035, and even more so by the year 2050. Now, the trade war that is being, the specter of trade war, the demands that are being made by people like Mnuchin of the Treasury on China, are related to preventing China from realizing this objective. And and China isn't going to go along with this trade with the trade war. That what the U.S. is seeking to do is force the Chinese to abandon the acquisition of the most advanced science and technology. What the trade negotiators are trying to do is get China to give up its commitment to develop the most advanced scientific and technological development. That's the issue. That's the issue. The whole trade imbalances, well, that's secondary. The Chinese are proposing that their U.S. Treasury notes be used to build up the U.S. economy, which will force the United States to develop, and then the United States will have more to export to the world. But so as long as the trade is rising, it's not a problem to have a trade imbalance. As long as the trade imbalance between the U.S. and China is improving the future productivity of the United States. But that's not happening. What's happening instead is that the Federal Reserve, the other major central banks in Europe and Japan, are printing, are generating massive quantities of liquidity to roll over all of the debts. Even though they're at lower interest rates, they're creating massive debt. But the debt does not have any value with respect to the real economy. The money that they're creating is not being used to do anything, to build anything. It's just creating more debt. And every citizen of the United States is going further into debt. Okay, they're rolling over their debt at lower interest rates, but the whole system is going to collapse. You cannot save that kind of system. And maybe they can keep pumping this money in and creating more debt to roll over the existing debt, but that won't last forever. And now Naomi Prince was here yesterday on our book tour. Is someone who's spelled that out in very stark detail. So anyhow, so the Belt and Road isn't based on that. It's based upon creating credit, and then the credit is used to build the infrastructure, and then all of the area around the infrastructure becomes valuable, and then businesses can be set up. Farming can take place because now you have a way of bringing the food out. Mineral mining can take place. Manufacturing can take place. You can build cities along the way. And this is fundamentally no different than the old Silk Road, which was a spice trade. It was the silk trade. And you had civilizations built up along the old Silk Road through the trading routes. And also you shared knowledge, you shared technology along the routes. And all of this is the modern form of doing this. Okay. So we have a future in the Belt and Road. We do not have a future in the collapsing financial system. So the question is, how do you get the U.S. to transition out of the collapsing system into being part of the Belt and Road, into connecting the U.S. to the Belt and Road, into transforming the U.S. into a productive part of the world economy. Right now, we are not a fundamentally productive part of the world economy. We are a post-industrial, imperial consumer that lives off of the fact that we give people dollars, but we don't give them anything but dollars. And dollars are the basis of world trade, so therefore they use the dollars to trade with, but we don't give them much of anything. That's why we have this massive trade deficit. So putting a tariff on goods from China is only going to destroy Trump, because the U.S. can't produce those goods anymore. So he's going to end up penalizing the American people, and that's not going to work. So the whole trade thing is screwy, because it's not based on an actual solution to the economic crisis. And part of the reason that Trump can't deal with that is he's under massive attack right now. The coup is going forward, and right now we're entering the critical period where we have to crush Mueller. We have to crush the coup, because that is what's creating a lot of the problems where the United States cannot talk to Russia. Until Trump sits down with Russia, he can't make a deal with Russia. Right now, the U.S. Military is not backing out of the Middle East. It is going full forward to try to break up Syria at this point by amalgamating those Kurds they're trying to become to convince to become separatists, to separate from Syria, and the mercenaries that are fleeing and are being regrouped into some kind of formation in the northern part of Syria under U.S. command. So the stripes haven't changed. The U.S. policy is now, and then you have the big thing that happened today, which Trump, accused, said we're cutting out of the deal that Obama worked out. Well, the deal was not very good. It was kind of screwy. It didn't make a lot of stuff didn't make any sense. It wasn't really a deal that was designed to end the whole thing, but rather it had all kinds of problems. So now he's pulled out of the deal, and he's blaming Iran for terrorism and for their military or their revolutionary guards, which are, in my view, playing a very positive role in Syria. They're helping Yemen defend itself against the most brutal assault by the U.S., Britain, France, and Saudi Arabia. They're going through the same thing in Yemen, that only worse than what the Syrians went through. And this is, so Trump is siding with Israel, siding with Saudi Arabia, putting forward Iran as a murderous regime, but he's also leaving open the possibility of a better negotiated settlement. And now Israel is using its air force to strike military positions inside Syria. So now Israel's coming into the war alongside ISIS, and which has been defeated to a large degree, with the U.S. in a continuing war in Syria. This isn't going to work. But the main issue from the standpoint of the Belt and Road is the role of Iran. Iran is a very central country in terms of the Belt and Road. It is the corridor that links India to Pakistan, to Iran, to Turkey, and from Turkey to Southern Europe. That is the corridor of the Belt and Road, which is the key to the development of that whole region, because then you have corridors going down, into the rest of the Middle East. But that's the main corridor. That's the main land corridor for India, Pakistan, Iran, and Turkey. And without that southern route, you're not going to be able to develop all those regions the way you need to develop them. So Iran, enforcing embargoes on Iran, enforcing sanctions on Iran, just like they do on Russia, is absolutely crucial to keeping Europe from working with Iran, from keeping Europe to work with Russia, to keep the whole system in place. The whole system right now is depending on putting a wall, economic wall, between Europe and Russia, and Europe and Iran. However, it's actually having a much worse effect on Europe in terms of their economic, because they need to have trade with these countries. They need to have trade with Russia. They need to have trade with Iran. This is very important for Europe. But these sanctions are designed to contain Europe, and prevent them from linking with Russia and the East, and also with Iran. So this is all, which is part of the whole Belt and Road. So this is all part of it. And then you have the Israeli angle, and then you have the Saudi angle, who essentially are demanding that the U.S. go to war with Iran as a precondition for their continuing to support the United States. So, and then you have the role of the British, who are manipulating the Iranians and manipulating the Saudis and the Israelis. And of course, Israel can give up its dream of a greater Israel. Iran has put an end to that dream. Hezbollah has put an end to that dream. And Hezbollah came out ahead in the elections in Lebanon, so the coalition that they're a member of is now going to be becoming the government in the parliament. And Hezbollah is a very respected organization in Lebanon. These people, they fought the Israelis to a standstill, and they have also helping the Syrian government defeat ISIS. And Hezbollah and Iran have played a very major role in stabilizing the Middle East and preventing the takeover of Syria by the Islamic Caliphate, which would have then spread all over the world. So this is probably why there's tremendous bitterness towards Iran especially, and towards the Hezbollah, because they have thwarted the imperial policies of the British more than any smaller group. These are small groups. Iran only has 80 million people, but Hezbollah is only a small portion of the population of Lebanon, and they have performed miracles in terms of being a thorn in the side of the British and the imperial system. And through them and through Iran, essentially, in Russia, Syria's sovereignty has been preserved, but with the preservation of Syria's sovereignty, there is a potential future in the Middle East. But Trump has not broken with the policy of the Obama administration completely. Maybe he's going to renegotiate a different deal with Iran that brings Iran into a different relationship with with their neighboring countries. But we don't know that, and we don't know where this is all going to go yet. Him reneging on the deal that Obama made. Um, so, but the thing you have to understand is that the greatest evil in the world is poverty and ignorance. Poverty and ignorance are the essence of feudalism. Poverty and ignorance is the essence of slavery. Poverty and the ignorance is the essence of the peon system that existed under the Spanish in Latin America. Poverty and ignorance. Without poverty and ignorance, you cannot sustain an oligarchy. Without poverty and ignorance, you cannot build mercenary armies, because you get recruited. Without poverty and ignorance, you can't sustain all these religious fundamentalist groups all over the world. Because what drives people into these religious fundamentalisms is poverty and ignorance. Okay, this is what you're dealing with, and the idea of the Belt and Road is we have the means, we have science, we have technology, we have the potential to bring all of humanity into a material circumstance and educational circumstance that they don't have to be animals. They don't have to live like animals. They don't have to live in fear of, they can actually have a decent life. Not like what's happening in the United States in the last decades, where our life has become less decent. You know, and we have now, I think, 40 million people under the poverty line. And in any street corner you go to now, you somebody panhandling. You know, it's really gotten bad. Because the mindset of the British in two different forms. The mindset of the British in terms of the conservative liberal view is that you need the struggle of the survival of the fittest in order to get people off their ass to work. You know, so you need poverty to stimulate. The fear of being homeless, the fear of being poor is the thing that drives the nation and the economy and everything. These people suck. People like Paul Ryan suck. People like Newt Gingrich suck. People like the Koch brothers suck. I mean, the Koch brothers, they suck because that's how they think. Oh, you're going to give them something? Oh, you're not going to work for it? Oh, you're only encouraging them. Well, yeah. Yeah, we're encouraging them. Right. Well, yeah. But why don't you support an industrial developing world? Why don't you support raising the living standards of everybody through economic development? In America, they've lost even a conception of how to do that. FDR and Kennedy, had that conception, but they've lost that sense of how you raise a population up from a backward condition to a better condition. They've lost it, and you can't do it. Except through massive infrastructural development, through massive economic and getting the U.S. to participate in the development of the world. You can't do it any other way. So these people believe poverty is a necessity. They don't want to see the world poverty go away. That's not right. Why should you want to care about other people? That's altruistic. Altruism is bad. You're a do-gooder. You're a liberal do-gooder. Altruism is bad. And then you have it on the left. They're anti-working class. Why are they anti-working class? Because the working class doesn't agree with them on, transgenders and the environmental thing, and they don't agree with them on, on their small is beautiful, bicycle lanes, and all this other garbage that they're being promoted. So they're anti-working class. The Weathermen were a radical group and the radical left in the 60s was not with the working people. They were not for the working people. They were for some kind of utopian socialism or some kind of thing. I don't even think they were really clear about it. But they did not have and the Democratic Party was taken down, has been taken down, has changed dramatically. Dennis Kucinich lost today. He lost the race for in the primary. I think it's the gubernatorial primary today in Ohio, by a huge margin. And he's a good guy. I mean, he's an FDR Democrat. He's against all these wars. What happened to the Democrats? Well, the Democrats, they've collapsed. We have a mess. So, but LaRouche's policies are there. We're getting a very profound response to our policies now in the population. People are hungry for trying to figure out how to solve the problem. Yes, they agree with Trump. We want to make America great again. Yes, we want to have infrastructure. But how do we go about doing it? How is Trump going to go about doing this if he's facing constant assault and impeachment? And it doesn't end. And it's not going to end. But it has to end. You have to break the back of the coup. And this has to be done in the near future.